Hello guys and welcome back to the channel. So in this video, I'm going to interview the one and only Kris Patel. And he is a fellow YouTuber. I'm not sure that I said your name right. I'm sorry if I butchered it.
No, you said it exactly right. I'm just gonna put on my headphones so this way we don't get any echo if anyone hears any echo.
That's
Okay.
good. That's good. So if you guys like this content, as always, you can hit the subscribe button on my channel, and Kris's channel is going to be in the description box below. And you are also a fellow. I know that you're not exactly a Palantir YouTuber, but somehow I only see you in Palantir videos. How would you describe your channel?
So the thing is, I primarily started this YouTube channel because I found Palantir to be a super interesting company. It's one of a lot of companies that I actually invest in. The only thing is, when it came down to Palantir, there was such a big community around it that needed somebody to help translate some of the stuff that was going around in the background. And also, there's also a lot of news coming out about Palantir, and some of it deals specifically with the military. And I have a background in the military, so I was like, oh, I have a technology background, I have a military background. I could probably put those two things together and try to explain what Palantir's real value is. So that's what I originally started doing. My intent was never to be a content creator. But it kind of just worked out that way, and now that I'm doing it more actively, I find actually it's a nice rewarding thing because my goal with content creation at this point is not necessarily monetary. It's more to just meet like-minded investors that I can like pitch ideas against, right? Because essentially it's all about learning. And the more you learn, the better you become as an investor. And being part of a community of investors, you get to see what the raw thoughts are in the background. So I met a lot of great people like Amit, of course, Sean from Invest to Live, CodeStrap. So all these things just kind of factor in for me. And my channel, even though it has a lot of Palantir content, I'm also going to start doing more things around other companies like Snowflake, which I have been privately researching on my own, and I think it's actually a very good company. It's got a lot of great products. Some other people have reached out to me about companies that they are interested in trying to do a little bit more deep analysis on, and I'm trying to look at those companies as well and see if there's value in them. That's what I would say that my channel is focused around.
Interesting. I'm super looking forward to the Snowflake videos, by the way, because as you said, it's so interesting that Palantir has such a big community, and there's other companies that are supposedly similar, but because they're missing the community behind it, it's so hard to tell, how they are really doing and what is their product. I mean, just for Palantir, it's almost impossible for a non-technical person to understand what Palantir actually does. So, really looking forward to your
Yeah.
Snowflake. Uh,
Yeah, Palantir just has this like mystique behind it. Whatever it is, it just makes it a very interesting company to follow. It's got a very interesting story, whereas Snowflake does not, right? They're more of a traditional SaaS company that's like any other cookie cutter company out there. But if you dig just a little bit, into it, you can actually see what the real value of this company is, right? And I think it doesn't necessarily have like I said, the mystique behind it. It's not cool. Like Snowflake is not cool, except to people using Snowflake, which find it to be very cool. So
uh, Cool. And very interesting. You actually ended up selling Palantir at one point, which you did in an insanely funny way. You had an automation with Alexa. I don't know if you can do it again for the audience sake.
the setup for it, like it's a hit or miss because the if you say if anyone has an app, Amazon Alexa right now, damn it, even if you say the name, what ends up happening is if you say execute order 66, I have to make sure she's not listening. If you say execute order 66, she'll say like I'm not a clone trooper. So that like they have an automatic response to it. So it's like Alexa, execute order 66.
Yes, my lord. Hold on, I'm not a clone trooper.
So that's the default that always comes up, right? But if you put in a couple of other words into it, you can get Alexa to do another automated thing. I'll do it. Hopefully it works. Um, Alexa, the time has come. Execute order 66.
Yes, my lord, it will be done. The Palantards will be hunted down and destroyed.
You see what I mean? Like, so sometimes the automation works, sometimes it doesn't. Like when it comes to that. So,
Anyways, it's freaking
Alexa,
awesome.
stop. Alexa, activate studio mode.
I was just gonna say what I'm really interested in. When you first bought Palantir, what was your thesis in buying it, and then what was the thesis breaker for you that you sold it at that time? And you recently, I mean, yesterday, no, I mean, already on the CodeStrap interview last week, you announced that you're coming back into Palantir. So what is different now, and how the thesis has changed for you? And I want to say that I really respect your channel, because I don't have a problem with anyone selling Palantir as long as it's not done out of fear, or because you seem like a guy who has an actual investment thesis, and then if it breaks, it breaks, and then no emotions, you sell. So I just wanted to say it, and I want to hear it from you.
So I would say, first of all, I've had past trauma when it comes to being super bullish on a company and just staying with them for prolonged periods of time. Right. So I'm more of a seasoned investor when it comes to that. So if you got burned in the past, you know exactly what I mean, where it's almost like, oh my God, this company is great, this great product. And then literally you diamond hands it all the way into bankruptcy. And I'm not that guy anymore. Like, I've realized that you have to have a thesis, and if the thesis breaks, you have to get out and just give yourself enough of a time where you're reanalyzing your thesis to see where you are. So the original bull case thesis for Palantir for myself was that they have an exponential growth curve that they're starting to hit with. And we saw that after the IPO, they were generating revenue. They were that was high growth, high margin, and it was just on another level. And then over time, you started to see that growth trajectory slow down, and it started to slow down considerably. The problem was that their competitors, even though some people don't say that they don't have competitors, that started to actually go down. That didn't go down nearly as much as Palantir. So what happened was the business environment. You have to think of it as, what amount of risk you're willing to take in order to get a certain type of return. So the thing that I would say is, when Palantir was valued very highly, everything was valued very highly, right? When things started to go down, it just made the risk proposition for Palantir worse than it is for other companies who are still operating very healthily. They've got great products that are out there. So the question was around, okay, so what is management doing about this? Are they realizing that there's fundamentally something broken in the way that they're doing things? And at the time, I really had to dig down deep and do more analysis. And one of the things that we spoke about in length in a lot of our Palantir weekly conference calls was around the not so great of a job that they were doing with marketing, right? Also, their reluctance to, give the product out to do a freemium tier, right? And also, how are they impacted by the geopolitical situation where you have the politics of it actually interfering with Palantir's growth trajectory? Because you know at this point, Palantir has a lot of enemies out there in the woke world, basically, and the woke world controls technology. So was that going to be something that limited Palantir considerably in terms of growth going forward? So a lot of those factors kind of had to be put in place. And then also the pricing, right? So if you're buying Palantir at $15, $20, there was like a $30 billion market cap at that point. So now that it's gone down to almost $7, right? It means that the value proposition for Palantir in terms of growth over the next 5 to 10 years, it doesn't have to be a $1 trillion company to give you a really sizable return anymore. If you buy a company that's, let's say, $50 billion market cap, and it goes to 500 billion, which would be literally a top 10 company, that would take a lot more to get there versus Palantir right now, which now is only a $15 billion company. So even if let's say they get up to Salesforce numbers, that's still a 10x from where we are today. Normally speaking, people should not be like buying companies. Oh, look, it's a small market cap, which means that it's going to, you've got a higher chance at at getting like a 10x return. That's not the way that people should think about it, but it is something to keep in mind that a lot of people may not be recognizing the value. The other thing is Ukraine, right? It's pretty much confirmed how big of an impact Palantir's had in Ukraine, to the point where the CEO is meeting with the president of the Ukrainians. Like, that's like on another level of connections. And also now we've got confirmation that because the Ukrainians are winning, that's another thing. So it's like, okay, so now you have a software product that's tested in the battlefield, it's working. And then in September, we started to see a lot of contracts with the government starting to come in, right? Especially from the military side. So that just goes to show that now the military even understands that the value that Palantir can provide. Because if it can help bridge the gap between Ukraine versus Russia, then imagine it in the hands of a country like the US, which has way more value and utilization cases than the Ukrainians do. So in that regard, the thesis kind of flipped a little bit. Even their commercial presentations also helped in changing my thesis a little bit, because my thing, and when I spoke to CodeStrap, even if, let's say, the commercial segment didn't do any business, like let's say they just stayed flat, they didn't grow as much, the military side will pay their bills for the next 10 years, if not more. And so now you're pretty much getting the commercial for free, right? So that's my thesis now, saying, okay, you know what? Even though at $30 billion to even $50 billion market cap, you need commercial in order to see the justified returns of getting.
It was even higher. I think it was, because what was it? It was $44 at the high, and now we do a back math on it. So if the $8 is 15 million, 15 divided.
Yeah, I would say the euphoria around the $44
billion.
Yeah.
82 billion.
Yeah, I mean, the euphoria around that figure was just kind of mind-numbing when you think about it. When you look back, because at that point it was a meme stock, right? So, and it wasn't there for a very long period of time. I mean, if you look at the support levels right now, it's not breaking below $7. That's in my opinion, that's a good sign, you know.
Yeah, me too. I mean, there's no telling if it's going to break below that in the future, but I would say that it's definitely very interesting how Palantir had its lowest point in May 12, I believe. And if you compare it with the rest of the market, Palantir has been basically slowly going sideways and higher, and almost like the general market has been basically falling since. Like I think Palantir is 25% up since May 12, and the Nasdaq is like 20% down. It's like a 45% divergence, just pretty crazy.
Yeah. And a lot of companies, their business cases are going down. So the value proposition for some of the other companies, because of the recessionary environment that we're in, they may not do as well. And Palantir, because of its government business, is insulated against a lot of those changes. Yeah. So, well, I mean, that's still left to be seen, because earnings will be very telling to see how Palantir is performing in that regard, to see how much commercial growth is still coming in and how much government growth is going to expand. I do think that we are not going to see a strong quarter, only because Palantir at the end of the day is still a discretionary product, right? Which means that companies don't need Palantir to run their organization right now. Even though some commentators have said, oh, if you don't have Palantir, you're going to die. Like, dude, no one is in that position right now. Like, you can still operate your business in a profitable way without Palantir. But if you want to become more profitable, Palantir will definitely help you do that. So I think what it is
this is where I would argue with you that, you know, when you're in a tough economic environment and you know that Palantir is going to save you money in the business, then it is sort of idiotic to not go ahead and use it, right? Even though it's technically correct that you can get away without using it.
Well, unfortunately, the businesses don't operate like that, where they try to think. They're not as forward-looking as we would like them to be, right? Yeah, they're not going to say, okay, you know what, let me spend, like, the thought of spending more money to save money is not like that big of a thing. Like when you're in a budgetary position.
That's how I think, at least in my business. You know, like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, I mean, but here's the thing. I think what we're looking at sometimes is only one part of the cost, which is the cost that we have to pay Palantir, right?
yeah,
But if you think about it from your organization standpoint, you have to take resources like people, you have to take software, you have to take computers. You have to do a lot of stuff to get your organization to change. It's not as simple as buy Palantir and tell someone, okay, here you go, you're going to use this and make us more efficient. No, you have to get them actually integrated into your organization, which means that you have to pay people to go to training so that they learn how to use it, right? You have to look at your what's that thing, your machinery to see where the data is coming in and program things around there. So it's not as simple as get Palantir and you start saving money right away. It's get Palantir, identify where you can save money, and then implement the changes today so you see the value, the return value in maybe 1, maybe 2, 3, even 5 years out. And that's the key to remember right now. Where a lot of companies right now, they're like, we may not be around in 2 years. I'm not going to invest in Palantir, products because I'm about to hit bankruptcy. I'm about to
yeah,
lose
yeah.
credit.
But look,
Yeah.
I do think that there is, like, for example, Hertz. Like they
Mhm.
recently started a partnership with Palantir, and
Yeah.
for example, it's just my logic that there's a few big rental companies, like there's Hertz, Avis, I don't know, probably one more that I. Yeah.
There's a lot. There's a lot. The whole market,
There's
that
a
is a
few
very big
very big
market.
ones,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
I can see that in their boardrooms when they say, okay, so now the demand is going to go down because of the recession, and we're going to have the same supply of rental costs servicing less customers. So it becomes like a, what do you call it, like a dog eat dog world. So you have to basically take away the other companies' customers to survive this recession. And then if you
Well, well,
listen to this.
Well, Hertz, first of all, just came out of bankruptcy, right? So they don't have nearly the amount of overhead that other companies in the industry,
That's also
by
true.
themselves. So that's one thing to consider, right? That they are right now in a process where they're trying to change. Like they have an active mandate to make sure that they're changing their business to be successful.
That's
So
true.
they're
That's
not
lucky.
going,
That's
yeah,
lucky.
they're not going to follow the same things that got them into trouble in the first place. So right now they're in a point where they need to innovate. They need to figure out ways to do it. So other companies which are still profitable but not as profitable, they're not going to try to take on the risk of adopting something new. For Hertz, it's almost like a make it or break it thing right now. Where if
Yeah,
they don't make it, they're just gonna go bankrupt. They're gonna die. So at the end of the day, Palantir is something that they're more willing to try. A lot of companies are in that position right now. So maybe that does work out for Palantir, but who knows? I do, however, have to say that there are a lot of challenges that are coming across a lot of industries that I think Palantir has to present good use cases on. And I think the use case for Hertz is actually perfect because the total number of rental cars right now is not there. Like we've got supply chain issues, so there's the cost of cars are crazy, and I think the demand, especially after COVID, has gone up. So how do you do that in a limited fashion? Well, you have to do it in a very efficient way in order to compete with all these other car rental companies. Because you named a few, but in the U.S. there's probably close to like 17 that I know of.
wow.
Yeah, and it seems like a new one is always popping up any day. And then there's like other companies. Like, have you ever heard of something called Turo before?
Yeah, yeah. Like where you
Yeah,
share the car.
yeah.
Like,
It's like Airbnb, where literally if you have your car, you can just put it on Turo, and people will come, they'll rent your car, and then they'll give it back to you, and you can make money. Like it's a big thing. Like right now in Atlanta, I see a lot of people who have like literally like 5, 10, 15 cars that they literally keep buying and just renting them out, and they've turned it into like almost like a Airbnb kind of business. Me, I could never do it. Like, dude, I love my car. No one's gonna ride. No one's gonna drive my car but me. I can't do it. I
what do
use
you drive?
Turo. Huh?
What do you
What
drive?
happened? So my wife, she has a Lexus RX something, and I have a Honda Civic. But I love my Civic. Like, it's a good car. I don't drive nearly as much right now, but just my car is an extension of me, so I
Yeah,
don't like
I
people
get
driving
it.
my car.
Yeah, totally get it.
Yeah.
So It's 2 days, T-2 days until Palantir reports earnings. And I have a really interesting tinfoil hat theory that I wanted to check with you, because in Q1 and Q2, the CFO, and I think it was even Karp, they alluded to the fact that their margins were dropping. And then, investors and analysts were asking, like, why are your margins dropping? And they just said that they're using their balance sheet to, use opportunities, and they're not going to leave people in trouble in their worst time when the paperwork is not signed. And I couldn't help but understand that in a way that they're doing stuff in Ukraine that was, not approved through the budget, or, like, let's say that the Ukraine government ordered from them and they said, yeah, we're going to get support from the US. Biden promised it, it's on the way. And then Palantir just used the balance sheet to, take, take advantage of this opportunity. And per the rules of bookkeeping, if they get the money in, they should be able to count that income also. So I think that there will be a very big potential upside in this Q3. But this is like a complete tinfoil hat theory, because, I mean, if you look at their margin, it was like the adjusted margin. I don't remember now the numbers. It's also a bit early here still, but I think it went like 20% down. Like they went from like 30% adjusted profit or 28% to like 15%. And there was no real good explanation for it,
So think of it this way. When you're trying to grow your business, right? Palantir still has a very heavy focus on its government revenue. Where else and how else are you going to get a chance to show off your product in a live environment, especially something like war? It's rare. Like, wars these days are not as common as people. And literally on the other side is Goliath and David. Dude, if you're a slingshot manufacturer, you're not thinking, well, you know what? I need to sell this slingshot at a profit. No, you need to get the slingshot in the hands of David so that everyone after Goliath is down, everyone's going to be like, I need to get me a slingshot. So Palantir had a very calculated move when it came to supporting the Ukrainians, even though it did mean that they were going to take some hits in the margin side. That decision was amazing, because that actually is going to lead a lot of countries that normally would not have considered Palantir to actually be like, hey, why are the Ukrainians winning right now? What's the secret sauce that they're using? And if one of the secret sauces is Palantir, that means everyone's going to be like, hey, maybe we need to take a second look at these guys. So I think, yes, they did sacrifice some margin to get that. But here's one thing that we have to just take a step back. When it comes to revenue recognition and balance sheet and all this other stuff, it's much more long-tailed than we'd like to believe. I don't think that we're going to see like a huge amount of contract revenue come in. The government is notorious for that. I've worked in the government side, so I can tell you they're the best customers and also the worst customers. The best customers in that they will blindly spend millions upon millions of dollars on a product. But they're the worst customers because they literally have unlimited amount of time where they can pay you. They'll tell you like, hey, listen, I ain't got the money right now. Come back next year when the budget is there. Don't worry, you'll get paid, but it may not be today. So that's where I think Palantir is right now. With, the way that the government works when it comes to spending on products, not people, they always pay the people on time. But when it comes to vendors, they're always like, hey, hold on, maybe, let us get some money together. Let us, appropriate some money in our spending bill for next year, especially with a product like Palantir, which is discretionary. So if you think about it from a military contracting standpoint, people think of like you're buying an aircraft carrier. The government doesn't just have a checkbook sitting somewhere saying, hey, we need an aircraft carrier. Okay, come on, let's get an aircraft carrier together. Let's just sign paperwork and send the money to Boeing, and they'll sell us a ready-made finished aircraft carrier. No, it works by, hey, we want an aircraft carrier. who needs, who's going to build it for us? And then there's a bunch of vendors out there, they're saying we can build it for you. And then they'll say, okay, well, how much money do you need in order to research how to build an aircraft carrier? And then the government gives you a little bit of that money. And then you come back with a competitive bid saying, look, we can build you an aircraft carrier for 5 billion. And then the government once again goes back to Congress and says, hey, listen, guys, these guys are saying they can build us an aircraft carrier. It's going to be 5 billion over the next 5 years. And that's when you start getting milestone payments and all this other stuff. So it's not as simple as, you just buy a product and it just shows up at your door. It's not Amazon. It's literally a service that they're buying. Now, one of the things though is that once you buy from them and they become integrated into your, into the government side of things, that is sticky. The government is not in the habit of switching things like they're not willy-nilly switching things from one thing to another. They are going to be a customer for a very, very long time, especially in terms of military context. It's Palantir right now. Any of the contracts that Palantir is getting, those are going to stay in the government for the next minimum 50 years. Because
50. Did you say 15 or 50?
50. Wow. Because the way that the government works is that they just keep, it's hard to get things in the door, but it's also very hard to get things out the door. And if you're talking about something that has a military application that runs all the subsystems below it, that means that the cost of taking it out would be so much more expensive. So right now, Palantir gets in the door, all these contracts, they're going to stick around. They're just going to keep, the government's just going to keep renewing, unless someone comes up with something that's so much better than the existing product that's already out there, which clearly no one has any interest of doing at the moment because of the political nature of things. So I think Palantir's got, like I said, in terms of bankruptcy risk, Palantir is at a 0 bankruptcy risk. They've got tons of cash on the balance sheet. They've got a lot of government revenue, which is sticky revenue that's not going anywhere. Now we can see that there's a lot of companies that have found value in Palantir that they're going to keep, utilizing and growing. The only thing that I would say is that the growth prospects for Palantir may be a little bit limited in the short term, just because it's a discretionary product on the commercial side. It's not an essential product. People can still run the companies without Palantir. The key is when the economy starts to recover, people are also going to want to try to invest a little bit more into their businesses to try to get that value themselves. So I think the Palantir has a good future going, and this is the same argument that I think a lot of people made when it came to Salesforce, in 2010, where people were like, oh, Salesforce, the growth curve is they're growing maybe 20, 30% a year. That's not that much. There's other companies that are growing 50%. Why don't I just buy that? Well, guess what? Salesforce has almost had 30% growth for the last 10 years. You go back, you look at them, nice, consistent growth going like this. And if Palantir can maintain that nice, consistent growth like this is the perfect company to dollar cost average. Where literally you just dollar cost average. Don't even think about it. Just put a little bit of money that, you would have gone to maybe Starbucks or Chipotle or whatever and just say, you know what, maybe I'll skip the Starbucks and I'll just buy 1 or 2 shares of Palantir. I see a lot of people are hoping for a Tesla thing.
It's funny because that is my biggest investment mistake, Tesla. I found out about Elon Musk in 2012, and I started watching videos about him, obsessively on YouTube, and was reading his biography, this Ashley Vanna's book that came out. And I remember that I was talking to my dad, and I said, I think this guy is going to be the richest man on the planet. And somehow it didn't add up in my mind that the only way that he can be the richest man in the planet is that the stocks that he owns 100x. And I was all the time looking at Tesla, that this company is so overvalued and so overvalued and so overvalued. And this is what everybody was saying. And somehow it never occurred to me that when you take these growth companies, even if you buy them for expensive, they grow into the valuation and they way outgrow it, And I do see, obviously there is no guarantees that this is going to be the next Tesla, but I definitely see the same signs that I saw in Musk when I found him, and the community, and the growth in the company, the potential, yeah. So
I think one of the key differentiators between the two are it's around the actual ability to put it in your mouth. You ever heard of that theory? Like if you want to understand a company, put it in your mouth, eat it. Like so you have to use it to understand it. Anyone who owned a Tesla between 20 13, 14, 15 and 2018, they would have told you that this is going to be the most valuable company on the planet. Most people that I spoke to when it came to Tesla, I never heard anyone say, I hate my Tesla. Every single person is, I freaking love my Tesla. This is the most amazing experience ever. They've had nothing but positive reviews. Unfortunately, when it comes to Palantir, we don't necessarily see that, where there's not too many people that use Palantir that can openly speak about it, right? So we're kind of basing a lot of our understanding in what the company is saying, right? And now via some of its customer clients. But as a consumer, we're not going to experience Palantir because it's just not there. And it's
but
like
you see,
Salesforce. Yeah.
food
Yeah.
for thought. Like, what if Palantir is now where Tesla was in 2009? Let's say where where they were just talking about the Model S, and the product was not there to experience, and because I feel that Palantir in the future is going to come out with a more like more available product for everyone, but they're just not there yet. Like they need to.
Unfortunately, I don't see that happening where they penetrate anything into commercial, only because their products don't necessarily benefit. Like I don't see the use cases for retail. I mean, not for retail, sorry, for normal people like us. I think what it is it's going to be embedded in a lot of the subsystems that we experience naturally. So here's an example. While I don't use Palantir, I use companies that use Palantir. Like the other day, I flew on an A380 Airbus, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Guess what? It has Palantir. Like Palantir is one of the companies that's providing services for it, right? Right now, Hertz, let's say I rent a car. Even though I'm not experiencing Palantir, I'm experiencing the benefits that Hertz has because of Palantir. So, and it's the same thing with like Salesforce, right? I keep referring to Salesforce only because that is probably the most common way to explain what the growth trajectory of Tesla looks like. And it's like with Salesforce, it's very similar, where you don't actually utilize Salesforce at all, but all the companies that you interact with have Salesforce running in the background. And you don't even know it, believe it or not. Like right now, I work with a company called Change Healthcare. I didn't even know that they use Salesforce. When I log into their portal to put in information, I'm like, oh, this is interesting. And then they were like, and so I asked one of the sales reps, I said, what software are you guys using? Because, all the logos, everything, if you look on their website, it was all Change Healthcare. Well, it turns out that was just the UI. All the background stuff was all Salesforce. So when we're looking at even right now, when you go to a bank, right? When you go to the bank portal, you might not know what the subsystems are running in the background. So I think that's where I think Palantir's proposition is. I don't necessarily think that they're going to ever have a portal where you log into Palantir as a consumer and utilize anything. And that's okay, because guess what? The market for B2B is still very, very large, right? It's not like exponentially huge, but it is very large. So yeah, I think with that. But remember, they're also much, much higher margin too, right?
Yeah,
like software when it comes to B2B,
that's also true. Yeah. So question, what is your expectation for the Q3 earnings report, and what would make you sell Palantir if what would break your thesis, and how long are you planning to hold it?
I'm planning on holding it hopefully for the next 10 years. The thesis breakers that I did have are slowly being addressed. One of them being, more of an emphasis on marketing. Another emphasis was going to be on trying to open up the platform to, a freemium tier so more people can use it. I do have some information about that, but I can't disclose it. I do think Palantir is working on just developing a more community-based approach when it comes to developing their products. But that's something that, Palantir is going to have to talk about and just put it out there. But there is definitely a more of an emphasis to work with developers in creating use cases for Palantir. So I think that's another bullish thing. I would say in terms of this earnings report, we're probably going to see a very flat earnings. I would say guidance revision would probably put it downward. Like right now, they've set the expectation to be a 30% growth for the next 4 years, 5 years. That if there's anything that changes on that, that may not reflect very highly on them. And the other thing that may not work out well is if they push back their target profitability even further, because I think that's what took a lot of people for a ride when Alex Karp said that they don't expect to be profitable. Yeah.
Don't you think that Palantir is sandbagging a little bit? That because it seems like when they give the short-term predictions, they normally always almost overdo it. Like when they give that next quarter, we're expecting this much revenue, this much margin. So far, as I've been following the company, they have always overdone it. And yes, if they do take away the 30%, that's going to be a big down catalyst for the stock. But if they reiterate because they took away in Q2, they took away this, that they're going to grow 30% this year. And if they would reiterate something like, yeah, the growth is back, government growth is back, don't you think that that would be a nice catalyst for the stock?
I think they're going to be very weary on trying to put out a lot of positive information, because the way that the macroeconomic condition is kind of presenting itself is that you don't want to risk over promising. It's easier to under promise and over deliver than the other way around.
It's very interesting. So that they would like sandbag more.
Everyone is doing it. Like every single company is doing it right now. Like they're all like, listen, don't expect growth in 2023. Like we just have a tough environment, whether you're talking about the semis with Micron, whether you're talking about the software company. Even Snowflake was like, listen, guys, don't expect more than 60%. If we get above 60, we're good. We're golden. Even though we're going to try to get 80%, 90% growth, if we can't, whatever. Because at the end of the day, the worst thing you can do is overpromise something, and then you get like, oh my God, you missed by a significant amount. Is there something wrong with your business? So even if the growth prospects for Palantir are there, they're not going to emphasize them. If anything, they're going to say, let's just chill and and just give people a little bit of a pause. There's no need for Palantir to raise capital right now, which is usually the main reason why companies want to be exceptionally bullish, because that means that the valuation goes higher so that they can sell shares and generate cash so that they can operate their business. Palantir has no need for that right now. It's
funny. I totally had this theory. Like if you put a gun to my head, like I would think that this earnings report would be very good and they would, jump 10 and 20%. But now what you're saying, it totally makes sense that this would be the time to really put the expectation down to the floor, because you're probably not going to get punished for it. And so maybe I changed my mind on that.
I'm not. Look, you never know. You really never know with this. Like there could be a time where it's just like, see, we were telling you that we are going to grow during bad times. Like, so this is, a point where maybe they want to prove that, but I don't think so. I think they're going to ride this negative macro trend and use it as a pretext for slowing things down, right? I think more important for us will probably end up being what the growth in sales looks like. Like their sale, like I want to hear more about the business. Like what are they doing to basically capitalize on the negative downtrend? Like what are they doing different than their competitors in order to make sure that they can ride the growth higher once everything recovers?
Is there anything that would make you sell the stock? Like for example, if they come out with, I would be surprised if government would be not re-accelerating a little bit, but let's say it's still not 30%. Let's say if they come out and government is, 23%, and commercial slows, I think it was 46%. Let's say it slows to 35%, and
I think the negativity is already baked in, brother. I don't think there's anything more you can say to like at that point. Like let's say it goes down to $4. At that point, it's like okay, you're
That
a
would be
$10 billion company that's generating $2 billion worth of
cash.
revenues and 500 million in free cash flow, and you've got 2.5 billion on the balance sheet. Like at that point, it's just retarded, you know. So
Was
so
it was it
no.
was
Uh
it
huh.
Sasha who said that seven? What did he say? That I think it was like if you would liquidate Palantir and sell all the assets and patents and everything, you would get about $6 a share or something. In his like, if you take the cash of the,
Mm, I
I don't
I
know how he came to that number, but he said something like this.
I I don't know. Like my thing is in 2017, 2018, Oracle tried to buy them for 30 billion, right? So there's definitely a lot of value that we may not be seeing at the current level. So there's something to think about when it comes to software, where if it's essentially something that's going to be game changing, it's all about the eye of the beholder, right? Where basically the person on the opposite end, they have to, if they see tremendous value in your thing, then you have to throw all traditional metrics out the door. What does that mean? That means that let's say, oh, you know, Palantir is generating 1 billion, 2 billion in revenue. Oracle does not give a shit about $1 or $2 billion in revenue to make their business grow. Their whole thing is if I'm getting the next gen technology, that's worth paying $30 billion for, which is a
Yeah,
premium, right? Because you're
yeah,
buying something that's next generation, and the total cost of researching, doing all the development to get that, plus the time that we have to spend in order to get to that level is going to be it's going to be $30 billion. It's going to be worth more than $30 billion
yeah, and
dollars.
the
So it's better
risk,
to take it out. And the
and the
risk,
risk,
right?
because like they can grow up and become a potential competitor to Oracle and put them
Mm-hmm.
out of business, and yeah,
Yep. Yep. So in that regard, I think right now, if Palantir didn't have its F class shares, there could be some companies fishing around trying to see if they could buy them out. You know,
yeah.
but because of the F class structure, it's not going to happen. You know.
Which is good for us investors, because then you would really like all the people who are down, they would be, you know, forced to sell, and that was the end of story of their
Yeah.
Palantir.
Yeah. Yeah, but see, management sees long-term vision. So that's one of the reasons why a lot of companies have had F-class structures, right? Where they don't want to be in a position where their stock takes such a tumble that these other companies that are way better in terms of capitalization can just come in and take them out, you know. I mean, look at what happened with Twitter, right? I mean, Twitter, a lot of people are giving their their former CEO, what's his name, Parag Agrawal, crap. But dude, this guy sold Twitter for $44 billion. He got
That's true.
Elon to buy it for $44 billion. Dude, you can hate his politics all day, but in terms of business, dude, the dude is shrewd. He got Elon. He G'd Elon. You know, is Twitter worth $44 billion? Hell
No,
no.
no,
Hell no. Hell no.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Cool, Chris. I need to run
Yep.
to pick up my son, but
All right.
I really appreciate this interview with you. I think we should do it again if you have
Yeah.
time, maybe in
Sure.
a month's time or so.
Sure.
And yeah, thank you again. Your channel
Yep.
is going to be in the description box below. And please make sure my audience checks him out. And have a
Yep.
great weekend. And
Yeah, man. You too. Take care.
yeah,
Have a good one, man. Take
yeah,
care.
you too. Ciao, ciao.